going on, Who Dat Nation? Welcome into another edition of Saints Now by Chat Sports. As always, I'm your host, Trace Girouard. In this edition of Saints Now, we're going to be going through my 53-man roster projection after OTAs and Minicamp have wrapped up. Training camp is set to start at the end of July out in Irvine, California, and we're going to go through this again after training camp. But for now, this is what I think will be the final 53-man roster in New Orleans. There's a lot of position battles that are really important. There's a lot of things that could go down for the black and gold, and I think this year is very, very important for Dennis Allen and Klint Kubiak's team. So what does the 53-man roster look like? I'll answer that in just a second. But before we get into that, I encourage you to join our squad. We're currently sitting at 27,919 subscribers. So if you want to join our family to try and get us to 28K, hit that sub button. And once you do, don't be a fraud. Hit that noti bell and join the noti gang so you can be the first person to comment on one of our videos, like Queen Courtney, like Mikey Taylor, and like my guy, US Champ. So let's start off with the quarterback, arguably the most important position in all of sports. Derek Carr, Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, and Nathan Peterman are currently on the roster. You did have Kellen Mond around for some of the OTAs and some tryout stuff, but he is no longer with the team. He did not join the team at minicamp. So here's what I'm projecting for the quarterbacks. I'm going to go with Derek Carr, Jake Haener, and Spencer Rattler. And just so you guys can, not freak out on me over here, the 1, 2s, and 3s, it's not a ranking. It's just, for my sake, making it easier to get all 53 players. And to be honest, if you guys don't think this is a hard thing to do, I encourage you to do your own 53-man roster projection. A lot of players have to get cut, and it's kind of tough to do it. But I think Nathan Peterman will be the practice squad quarterback. I think Jake Haener will be QB2, and Derek Carr, obviously, is QB1. Now, here's the running back room. This is one of my more interesting position groups, if you ask me. Alvin Kamara, obviously, we'll see what happens with him in a new contract, possibly getting a Saints for Life contract. Hopefully that gets done very soon. Jamaal Williams, Kendre Miller also on the roster. But then you got guys like Jacob Kabodi, Jordan Mims, James Robinson. Mims has been making a lot of noise in the offseason. And then in terms of fullbacks, you also have Adam Prentice and Zander Horvath. But for this, I'm only going to go with 4 guys, and it's going to be Alvin Kamara, Jamaal Williams, Kendre Miller, and at number 7, Zander Horvath. I actually have him beaten out Adam Prentice to be the starting fullback, and I will say it's worth noting Taysom Hill has been working with the fullbacks as well, so I expect him to play fullback a little bit for the New Orleans Saints, but I do like what Zander Horvath's receiving ability can bring. I like the idea of not limiting Taysom Hill to just 1 or 2 roles. I like having another option so you can get creative with the packages, and I think Klint Kubiak could use Zander Horvath similar to a way that he utilized Kyle Juszczyk with the 49ers. And here's the wide receiver group for New Orleans, one of my favorite position groups just because Chris Olave, A.T. Perry, and Rashid Shaheed are such fun players in my opinion. And if you ask me, these 3 guys are my top 3 people. Like, I absolutely love these 3 players. In my opinion, Rashid Shaheed is the most electric player in the National Football League. Chris Olave might be the most slept-on young wide receiver in the league. And A.T. Perry, don't you dare forget about Scary Perry. Now, here's what I got with the wide receivers. No Mason Tipton, no Kyle Sheets, no UDFAs made it in my roster projection because I went with Equanimeous St. Brown. He's actually been really impressive at minicamp. He's been making a lot of plays, more so than some of the other big names. Honestly, I've seen more around Equanimeous St. Brown than I have A.T. Perry, and I just think that that's a testament to what St. Brown is doing in order to earn a spot on this roster. It's not taken away from any of the other players, but I had to cut down to a couple players, so I went with these 6 guys. I think Cedrick Wilson will be your slot wide receiver, and I really am excited to see what Bub Means can do. Now, I think that this is a very underrated wide receiver group across the entire league. So do you agree with me? Is this an underrated group? Just type yes, type no. What do you think? I mean, I think Chris Olave has the ability to be one of the top wide receivers in the league. I'm not saying the top, but I think he could be a top wide receiver. Rashid Shaheed, like I said, one of the most electric players with a football in his hands. And A.T. Perry, I mean, goodness gracious, that guy is a highlight reel on legs. It is unbelievable what he can do. So I think they're severely underrated, and I think they deserve more respect. So type yes or type no. Now for the tight ends, this is currently what we're rolling with. Juwan Johnson, obviously he's dealing with a little bit of an injury. I'm going to address that in a second. Foster Moreau, I think, is going to be a really nice player in the Saints roster this year. He's been actually beefed up a little bit, gained a little bit of weight, put on some muscle, which is really good to see. Dallin Holker, maybe one of the more exciting UDFAs in the entire league, dare I say. And then Taysom Hill, the flex position, the football player, just the Storm and Mormon. He is so damn good at football. Now for the tight end projection, I'm rolling with 4 guys. And I could be convinced maybe if Juwan Johnson has to go on IR, maybe there's a spot for a Jimmy Graham, dare I say. He hasn't closed the door on it on a reunion and coming back. I even did a full breakdown on that multiple times on this channel, so go check those out. But I think Dallin Holker is going to make the roster. He's been working with the ones a lot at minicamp and at OTAs. We all know Taysom Hill is going to make the roster. Foster Moreau is going to be utilized quite a bit, especially with Clint Kubiak using a lot of 2 tight end sets. So I think having 4 tight ends on the roster will make some sense. And that's actually what they rolled with last year in New Orleans, 4 guys for the Saints when they added Jimmy Graham to the mix. So here's what the offensive line depth chart looks like. Trevor Penning has been getting a lot of work on the left side. Taliese Fuaga has been working on the right. Saldiveri, he has a little minor injury, nothing too crazy to worry about. Erik McCoy, he's a really solid center. I really like him. And I'm looking for a big year from Cesar Ruiz because he has been wildly frustrating in my personal opinion. Now, for the offensive line projection, I'm going with 9 players. Taliese Fuaga, Saldiveri, Erik McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, and Trevor Penning. Those are my starting 5 players. But I'm going to also bring in 7th-round pick Josiah Ezirim to make the roster as well. Lucas Patrick, I think, is a quality depth veteran piece in case Trevor Penning isn't playing well. Oli Udoh is also a nice swing tackle/guard position, kind of takes over that James Hurst role, if you will. And Landon Young, of course, has been with the team for a little bit of time now, so I'm going to have the Saints rolling with him as well because of the continuity fact. Now, I do believe Ryan Ramczyk, he will either retire or he will go on IR for this season. I do not expect him to play. I do not expect him to suit up, and I do not think that there will be any positive injury updates around him anytime soon. All the updates have been, we still have no timetable. It's not progressing the way we had initially hoped. And it's unfortunate because Ryan Ramczyk is a really good football player. But at the end of the day, some things are bigger than football. I mean, hell, does he want to go and dance with his kids at their weddings? Does he want to go be a coach for their kids' football teams? Does he want to just be able to go walk around at Walmart with his family? You know, there's some things that are bigger than football. So I wouldn't expect Ryan Ramczyk to suit up this year. But I will say this, if we do have any injury updates or any roster news, any sort of changes around the New Orleans Saints, we got you covered. We're your one-stop shop for Saints news, rumors, updates, buzz, all sorts of fun stuff. So be sure to subscribe, turn on your notifications, lock us in, so that way you can be a smarter and more informed Saints fan, and that way you can be entertained throughout it as well. Now, the Saints defensive line group, this actually got a nice little facelift compared to last year. Now, Carl Granderson, he led the team last year in sacks. I'm excited for him in this season. Colin Saunders, Binky, I want him to score a touchdown. Dare I say, I want him to score a touchdown. We had so many opportunities last year where we may have gotten to see it. It didn't happen. But I would like to see Colin Saunders punch in 6. Nathan Shepard was a surprisingly good addition to the defensive line as well last year in free agency. But Chase Young was the big splash move this offseason for the New Orleans Saints. And here's how I have the depth chart shaken out. So I have Chase Young, Saunders, Shepard, and Carl Granderson as my starters. Cameron Jordan, I think, is going to be a really nice rotational piece. He may even play a little bit on the inside. Brian Brzee, Christian Boyd, a draft pick from this past draft class, and then Isaiah Foskey, the second-round pick from last year. I actually have him beating out Peyton Turner for a roster spot. I think Peyton Turner, maybe he has some skills, but I couldn't tell you because he doesn't play football. He's injured all the time, so it's tough to get a read on him specifically. Now, here's what the linebacker group is looking like. Pete Werner, Demario Davis, Willie Gay. I was actually very excited about the Willie Gay addition. I don't think we're talking about it enough as Saints fans in terms of what he could possibly do for New Orleans. And then on top of that, Khaleke Hudson is another player that is really, really solid. And I think that he is a player that could make the roster. He has some coverage ability. He has some tackling ability, and maybe he could crack it. And so for this linebacker group, I'm rolling with 5 players. Demario Davis, Pete Werner, Willie Gay, no questions asked. Jalen Ford, a 5th-round selection out of Texas for New Orleans. To have him making the roster. And I actually had Khaliki Hudson beating out Nefi Sewell. This was kind of a tough one for me because Sewell did make some plays for New Orleans on special teams last year. But I think Khaliki Hudson is a better player all around, and I think that he could contribute not just on special teams but on defense as well. So that's why I went with him. Now the cornerback room, this is where things could get interesting this offseason. Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore, Alontae Taylor. Now, you also have guys like Kool-Aid McKinstry, who you traded up for this past year in the 2nd round at pick 41 overall. You have Shamar Jean-Charles. Will Harris was added to the roster in free agency. Ugo Amadi was with the team last year. You have Rajon Wright, the last chance you Hall of Famer, All-Star, legend, whatever you want to call him. This is kind of a hard one to guess for me specifically, but here's what I went with. I went Marshawn Lattimore, Paulson Adebo. Those are my starting 2 guys on the outside, and I think that Kool-Aid McKinstry will be a backup for those 2. I think Alontae Taylor starts in the slot. Ugo Amadi was a nice contributor on special teams, which is why I brought him back, and Will Harris does have a nice ability to play in the slot as well. So I think that he could be a player that could line up in the nickel position if need be. That's why I went with Will Harris in this scenario, but hey, let me know. Did I get this cornerback room right? The safety group, I really like it. I would love it even more if it had Justin Simmons, but I really like it. Jordan Howden last year was really, really fun. I think in year 2 he could take a big step. Jonathan Abram is returning to the Saints in free agency. Tyrann Mathieu, one of the best safeties in the league. PFF actually listed him as their number 10 overall safety across the entire NFL. JT Gray, your special teams ace, ain't no getting rid of him. And Millard Bradford, a sneaky good addition in my opinion to the Saints group from the UDFA class. He played with TCU last year, found himself in the right place at the right time. They call him Nuke out in Fort Worth, and I'm really excited because he's been really good at minicamp and at OTAs with multiple interceptions and multiple plays. For the safeties, I'm going with 5 players. Millard Bradford cracked the roster for me, and that was kind of a surprising one for me, and I had an extra roster spot, and I was like, hell yeah, give me Millard Bradford. This guy has been really impressive. And I think if anything, Dennis Allen is a damn good developer of defensive backs and defensive football players. So when it comes down to it, sure, run Millard Bradford. He can play safety. He can play in the box. He can play slot. He can play on the outside. He can do pretty much anything. He's a very versatile player, and I think that the Saints are going to really, really like that because if you can be versatile, you have so much more value in New Orleans. That's why I think Millard Bradford will make the roster, and I would love to see Nuke go make some plays. Now, I want you to rank the Saints defensive backs across the league. The corners and safeties included. Where do they rank? If you ask me, it's a top 3 group. It really is. Paulson Adebo, do not sleep on him. I also really think that Marshawn Lattimore is really damn good as well. And on top of that, I love Alontae Taylor. I think he has such an attitude that is, it's intoxicating. It's what's the word? It spreads to everybody. I mean, it just his attitude, it's infectious. Thank you, producer Reed. His attitude is infectious, and his mindset is one of those that is so impressive. And I think that he could take a big step in year 3. And Dennis Allen even expects him to take a step in year 3. If you think about it, there's only year 2 in the current position at slot corner or at nickel corner. So he's going to have an entire offseason to get, prepped and get better for this season. I'm excited for this group. I think it's a top 3 unit. Special teams, special plays, special players. Check, check. Thank you, brother. All right, Blake Grupe, I have him winning the kicker battle over Charlie Smith. Smith has a better leg. Dennis Allen said the leg strength favors Smith. However, Grupe's more accurate. Lou Hedley, I have him winning the punter battle. If you think that he's bad, I understand that he didn't have high net punt rating. I also know he didn't have a high hang time and whatnot, but he also had the least amount of yards returned on his punts in the league. He was one of the highest rated at downing balls inside the 20. Like, Lou Hedley was effective at times, and to say he was just horrible and absolutely garbage, I'm just going to say stop looking at the raw stats and go look at what he did. Zach Wood, it's been a long snapper for as long as I can remember. He ain't going nowhere. All right, quick reminder. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's video. If you want more content in between these videos, and if you want more content before these videos, I post all of my thoughts, all of my updates on social media before I take it to YouTube. So give me a follow on X at Trace Girouard 48. You can hit me up on Instagram as well. It's the same handle with an underscore at the end. Y'all stay golden. We'll see you next time.